I grew up in the video game revolution. Every kid had a Game Boy, and for a shy and reserved kid, I was hooked. I still remember many late nights and lazy weekends spent for playing countless hours on end. There was just something about making my character faster, stronger, and smarter that had me coming back for more. Fast forward to 22 years old, and my love for video games had only grown. You could say maybe a little too much. There were days where I would wake up, play video games, and go to bed, only taking breaks to eat and use the restroom. Sometimes I wouldn't even brush my teeth or go to the bathroom. Ugh. Sometimes I wouldn't brush my teeth or take a shower. I'd like to ask to restart my speech. I really blanked out there. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Give me just a
it's
moment.
hard.
I grew up in the video game revolution. Every kid had a Game Boy, and for a shy and reserved kid, I was hooked. I still remember many late nights and lazy weekends spent for playing countless hours on end. There was just something about making my character faster, stronger, and smarter that had me coming back for more. Fast forward to 22 years old, and my love for video games had only grown. I still remember there were many times when I would wake up, play video games, and go to bed, only taking breaks to eat and use the restroom. There were even some times where I wouldn't brush my teeth or take a shower. You could say that it became an unhealthy obsession. One day was a bit different than the others, because as I was falling asleep, I looked up at my ceiling for hours. And at one point, I began to cry. I didn't quite understand it at the time, but looking back, it made perfect sense. For all the time that I spent in the virtual world, my real world was falling apart. That's when I realized it was time to make a change. And I began the very first step on my journey, but not a journey in the virtual world. I began a journey in the real world. And luckily, all my time spent playing video games was not all a waste. Because in video games, in order to beat the game, you have to defeat the final boss. And just like in real life, we all have bosses that we have to slay. So I grabbed my virtual sword and my shield, and I began to take the first step on my journey and defeat the first boss. And that boss was fear. You see, I'd been a very timid person for most of my life. I never really liked taking a lot of risks. But fear is a lot like a monster that lives under your bed. It likes to growl menacingly and reach at you with its claws. And the first thing you want to do is cover your eyes and wish it would go away. But of course, fear doesn't work like that. In fact, the more that we run, the stronger fear seems to get. The only way to confront this fear is to get down and look at it straight in the eyes. And that's what I did. I began to push myself out of my comfort zone. I started talking to strangers and making small talk with them. I started opening up to my friends and family. And of course, this wasn't easy. There were so many days where fear was whispering in my ear all day long, and I felt absolutely exhausted. But as I continued to confront this fear, it began to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And at one point, I didn't even realize that it was there. Finally, I could say that I defeated the very first boss on my journey, and fear had been defeated. Now, although I was very hopeful, the second boss on my journey was right around the corner. This boss was self-confidence. You see, when you spend your life covered in fear, you don't spend a lot of time thinking about who you are as a person. If someone were to ask me, I would say, I like playing video games, and that's about it. So I began to step out and explore the world around me. If anyone had something interesting to say, I soaked it up like a sponge. And in the span of one short year, I went from Trevor, the video game player, to Trevor, the yogi, humanitarian, stoic, vegetarian, so many titles, I couldn't even pronounce half of them. But the greatest thing was, I developed this confidence. And I was able to talk to people and express who I was. It felt wonderful. And I could say, finally, I defeated the second boss on my journey, and I now had self-confidence. But something didn't quite feel right. For all this confidence that I now had in myself, I couldn't quite shake the feeling of being fake. I realized that what I had wasn't confidence at all. In fact, I was just trying to be someone that I thought other people wanted me to be. I realized that just like in my video games, I started putting on all this armor to protect myself. But the problem is, when I looked at myself in the mirror, I couldn't even recognize who I was. I couldn't even move. I realized that I had to start taking this armor off, piece by piece, one at a time, to find the pieces that really stuck with me, the pieces that made me, me. Over time, I was finally able to look at myself in the mirror again, and I was so proud of what I became. And the best part was I could look at myself in the mirror and be confident with who I was. Now, that was something worth celebrating. Finally, I could say the second boss in my journey had been defeated, and I now had, truly had, self-confidence. At this point, I'm sure you're saying, Trevor, you must be done with your journey because you've already defeated 2 bosses. But in fact, there is a third boss that is still eludes me to this day. One that I hope at some point in my lifetime, I will be able to defeat. That boss is finding my purpose. After my long journey, I realized that everyone here in this room, we all, at some point in our lifetime, will take our final breath. And the only thing that we will have are the actions that we took on this earth. And if you think about it, we all have fears that we want to conquer. We would all love a little more confidence in who we were. And so many more of us are out there trying to find their purpose. And the best part about it is that we all have our own journey. And it's so much fun because life is like a video game. But there is one key difference that I haven't told you just quite yet between the real world and the virtual one. That difference is that in the real world, you only get one life. So make the best use of it. Thank you.